Well, when I applied to come here, the only interview I had was in a pub with the three senior members of staff who had already been appointed. So we chatted for an hour and a half over a beer, and that was it. Those were easy days. The only building on campus was the first row of bricks of Eliot College. That was it. Oh, there was Beverley Farm. That was obviously an ancient building standing. But otherwise, it was a naked hillside. Then the Gulbenkian was being worked on quite early on, though I wasn't aware of it at first, by my head of department, Reg Folkes, Professor Folkes, the founding professor of English. He got intrigued by the fact that Leicester University had somehow got a theatre built very cheap. And he thought, if they could do it, we could do it. So he poked around all on his own. The university here wasn't the least interested. It was all down to Reg. And he found it could be done cheaply and that they got a very good architect to do an excellent design. So he chased this up and chased it up. And he got a £30,000 grant from the Gulbenkian Foundation, hence the name of the final place. And at some stage, the university here reluctantly coughed up about another 20,000 quid. So the whole thing was built for about 50,000 quid, which was absurd. And the university sort of didn't quite know what it would let itself in for, because it had all, as I say, all been Reg.
I came to the university in 1965 with my husband, Harry Bloom, who helped set up the law department. And we came down from London, and it was a wonderful atmosphere there because there weren't too many people. It was very intimate. We were very friendly with everybody. He was actually appointed on the committee of the Gulbenkian once it had been more or less built. And he appointed Reg Brown, who was the second director after a very short stay with the first director, who'd put on a play with a nude male. And as I say, in those days, it wasn't even a dumb thing in the West End. And I think the staff, there were a lot of people walked out of that first night. And it was a shock, especially for the VC, Templeman.
Yes, the naked man on stage. Reg Brown told me what it was. From what I remember, that was a satire show, wasn't it?
And I did come to the opening production. It was a bit notorious, really. It was a contemporary play by a playwright called Richard Drain. I don't know what else he wrote. But the play that was chosen to open the Gulbenkian was called The Exploding Dream. And in the standards of the 1960s, it was quite shocking. Now it would appear banal beyond belief, but there was actually some nudity in it. And of course this was outrageous in the 1960s, you know, nudity on the pub. Oh, really? And because it was the opening of the Gulbenkian, it was a big event. And the mayor of Canterbury, Councillor Bertie Buckworth, who I got to know quite well, came to it. And there was a lot of people walked out at the interval, by the way. They just didn't go back for the second half. They thought this was absolutely outrageous, which by the standards of the time it was. But dear old Bertie Buckworth was quite unfazed by it. He was a butcher. He was a Conservative councillor and mayor of Canterbury. He was a butcher. And he was interviewed by the Kentish Gazette afterwards. And the interviewer said, Mayor Buckworth, were you shocked by what you saw? And he just smiled and said, no, he said, I'm a butcher. I've seen lots of flesh. It didn't trouble me in the least.
Gulbenkian started. It was on its own. There was no drama department. Drama department came later. So within about, I don't know, 10 years, I'm speaking a bit vaguely, but something like that. On the one hand, the university was desperate to save money and would think, well, can we really afford the luxury of a Gulbenkian? And so from a financial point of view, it was often hanging by a thread. And this is where, because I was doing a lot of admin at the time, I was probably a dean or something, you know, I'd be called into various committees and try and defend the place. And then you knew, at least I knew, lots of people knew, that secretly the drama department was thinking, hey-ho, if it just drops off the twig, it will fall right into our lap. We'll have our own theatre. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So there was always this kind of fissure between the theatre and the drama board, as it then was. Eventually the drama board got their own sort of chamber theatre, but they still eyed the Gulbenkian enviously. So between the economic pressure and the lack of alignment with the drama board, that was how the place was under attack. And several times, at least on two quite big occasions, there was something like a committee of investigation, say, which says, is the Gulbenkian really worth its salt?
I was made the I was the first information officer of the University of Kent, and I did some magazines called FUSS, Forum for University Staff and Students, and I always felt it was very, very important with the university in its early days, but particularly to bring in the town and gown, in particular because it had made such an impact on Canterbury having the university here. I remember lots of us, of course, supported the university. We went to the plays there. You know, there was a sort of general feeling of gaiety, and this was a lovely experience for the university, which otherwise was having a fair amount of protest.
My perception was a lot of people from the town were coming up, and I think I noticed in one of our magazines that we brought with us, there was talk about the town gown thing, and the relationships with people from the town, and so a lot of people were coming for a night out. However, when I cottoned on to the students could come for 28p, I thought, well, this looked like quite a good deal.
Unlike the commercial theatre and cinemas, it was probably a safe place to put on things that were a bit more avant-garde and a bit off the normal track. So yeah, I think it probably was a good place to put experimental theatre and slightly different foreign language films and things like that might not have got a huge audience down in the town. I really loved film, and we used to come to the films here, and they used to show really good overseas films. So what did I see here? I saw a Catherine Deneuve film called Repulsion, and one with Jean-Paul Belmondo and Alain Delon, called Borsellino, which is a real classic sort of gangster movie set down in Marseille.
I used to do a lot of stage management work here. Yeah, I did 10 shows, usually about one a term, and I also got involved helping out on other shows as well. It was quite different then. There was a lot more student involvement actually in the theatre. I mean, Reg Brown did a lot of work to keep the theatre going and dragged it back from the brink. But it was, I think there was a lot, it was UKC Dramatics was the name of the group that was doing a lot of things here.
One of the great things was that there was enormous amount of enthusiasm for the Gulbenkian, and I think people did support it as much as possible. So I think probably they wanted to have really quality plays come up for the university. You see, Reg wasn't really an academic at all, which was a good thing, actually, I think. But he really respected, the humanities and people's wishes to have really good quality. That was very important to him.
But it was it was quite a dramatic start to the Gulbenkian theatre, and fair enough. Over the years, all sorts of huge variety of performances have been put on, and some have been good and some have been less good, but overall, the Gulbenkian, and then a little later Cinema 3, and then very, very much later the Collier Ferguson and the whole of the cafe. I mean, I've seen that develop piece by piece, and it's a wonderful, wonderful facility.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's quite clear is that this university has developed significantly, very much so.
I'd hope it'd still be here. I'd hope it'd still be. It does seem to do quite a bit of outreach work, and involving the local community and being something for all ages. And also one thing we have noticed is the music hall, the big, what's it called, the Collier? Yeah, that, because there wasn't a music degree or anything when we were here at the time, and there seemed to be the music facilities seem to have expanded.
Yeah, that used to be a lecture theatre, Cornwallis Lecture Theatre.
And so for the arts generally, I think it'd be quite good if it could actually keep going and indeed expand.